Hi FB family, welcome to Queen's Curry Kitchen. Sorry for the delay, I was having some internet troubles. But here I am, we're making some roti. I know a lot of you asked for naan bread, so I thought let's start with a roti making basic and then we will move to naan bread sometime next week. So let me flip the camera. You're going to need 1 cup of whole wheat flour or roti flour, whatever you have, and you're going to need ½ cup of water. Those are the only 2 ingredients that you need to make the Indian flatbread. It's a healthy option to eating rice because it's a lot less carbs. Of course, it's wheat based, so if you want to do a gluten-free version, you can try to do a gluten-free flour. And also in the Indian stores, you get bags of flour that are gluten-free roti flour. So they have different other grains that are combined to make that flour. So read carefully, because if you have like a corn allergy or a soy allergy, read those carefully before you buy the gluten-free roti flour. But if you have whole wheat flour, this is going to work just as well. So let me flip the camera and we can get started. Okay, so this is where all the action is at. This is 1 cup of flour. So the proportion of flour to water in roti is 1 cup of flour and ½ cup of water. So whatever quantity you're going to make, this cup should make about 6 rotis, 6 small to medium-sized rotis. If you're trying to feed more people, of course, you're going to do more flour, and then also you're going to increase the amount of water that you're using. Okay, so that's that. I don't put any salt or any oil in my flour, but there are people who do that if they like their rotis to be a little bit salty. So by all means, if you like it like that, go ahead. This is just a basic roti recipe. So this is a ½ cup of water. It doesn't just make sure it's not cold. It could be lukewarm, it could be warm, but just not cold, because the cold water makes the gluten like seize up, and then it's not a soft dough. So this is ½ cup of water. We're not going to add everything all together at once. We're going to add little by little, and we will keep bringing this together. Make sure your hands are really nicely washed. Do take off any rings or bands that you're wearing, because you don't want the dough to get entrenched in your stone settings or whatever. So you can see it's coming together, and you'll see that it's going to start coming together like that, but there's still a lot of loose flour at the bottom. I'm still going to reserve some liquid, so I'll work with this. I'll bring it together as much as I can, and I made a little bit of a mess, and that's okay. You can do it in a bigger bowl so that your hands have enough space to move. I just thought a transparent bowl would work really well for the purposes of this demo, so that's why I'm using this. So this is essentially a one-hand procedure till you get to the point where it's actually coming together. So you see it's coming together, but it's a very rough ball. What I like to do at this point is I like to take something that I can set it aside so that I can work on the dough that's left at the bottom. We still have a little bit of water left in here. Depending on what climate you live in, sometimes you might need a little more water, sometimes you might need a little less. Also the time of year that it is. So in the summertime you need a little more. Like see, I'm left with dry dough and all my water's run out. So we're going to go and get a little bit more water, but we will add it sparingly. Okay, so just a little bit. Just enough to bring this together. And you'll know that you did a good job with the dough when your hands will be completely clean and the bowl in which you're kneading your dough will be completely clean from the sides. That's how you know that your dough has come together beautifully. So we have this little guy here, like that. And then we have this. So it's now time to bring them together. And the way you get soft rotis is when you punch your dough down with your fist. That's how you get soft rotis. So you add a little bit of moisture, sprinkle it, and then you punch it down right at this stage. There's no proofing required because this is not a leavened bread and it doesn't have any yeast in it. So you really don't need to proof the dough. However, you need to rest it for about 5 to 7 minutes so that the gluten will get activated and you'll have a silky smooth roti. going to punch it a little more. And you'll see that it's a little dry to the touch. It's not soft yet. So you're going to keep working it a little bit. So you remember how dirty my hands were when we started? When your hands come out this clean, that means you did the dough right. And look how clean the bowl is. It's almost like there was no flour in it to begin with. So you know that your dough and the water proportion is good. The consistency is right. You're going to take some time and punch it a little more, because the more you work it, the more gluten is going to get released. You're going to do this. And then just before you set it aside, you're going to take some oil and rub it on there. Just regular oil. You could do coconut oil. You could do olive oil. This is olive oil. And then a little water. And then you just let it sit on the counter. So besides the dough, we're also going to need a skillet. I use a double skillet because I have to make rotis for 2 to 3 people at a time, so it just goes faster, and I like to work in production mode. But if you only have one non-stick pan, the round one, go ahead and use that. You don't need something elaborate like this, but you could do it on your cast iron skillet. You could do it on a non-stick pan. It's totally possible. There is no right and wrong over here. Let me just give it a quick cleaning. And then I'm going to turn this on. So I work with both burners only because then I can make 2 at a time. If you're trying to feed an entire family, then you want to make a few ahead of time and then take it to the table so that nobody's having to wait for their rotis. But mostly for an Indian meal, we have rotis and rice both, so it kind of works out. So for this, we're going to also use tongs, because after we make the rotis on this, we're going to give it the final finish directly on top of the flame. If you don't like the charred flavor, you can just leave it on the skillet and it's going to balloon up. We also need a rolling pin, not too wide, not too thin. I have these two and they're quite different from each other. So whatever you have access to, you can use it. If you don't have a rolling pin and you're just starting out, even if you have like a cylindrical glass or tumbler, you can use that. We will also need some flour for dusting our rotis. So I like to keep it in a box so that it doesn't make a mess. This is just the same flour that we use to knead the dough. This is the dry flour just to dredge it in. And then we need to have a countertop or a rolling board, whatever you have access to. So I'm going to actually make it right here so you can see it and I don't have to keep going back and forth. I'm going to turn, so this is kind of nice and hot right now. Let's take a look at how the dough is coming along. Okay, so if you look at it, I'm trying to show you up close. If you look at it right now, when it looks like cellulite, you know that it's not done, okay? And then when it starts looking like baby's butt, you know you have a good dough. I know it's a very weird kind of an analogy, but that's the best way to describe it. So we're going to keep working the dough just a little bit. It's only been a couple of minutes that we have allowed it to rest. You're going to keep working it, and it's really going to become smooth and satiny, like, you know, like Play-Doh after you've kneaded it for a while. I'll show you the texture up close, how it becomes. So this is like, we're just prepping it now to get started and make rotis. Okay, so you see how smooth this is? There are like literally no cracks in the dough, and it's really smooth, and it has a little sheen to it from the oil. So this is how you know that your dough is ready, and it doesn't stick anywhere. Like your hands will be absolutely clean, even though you're working with the dough. So you don't need to have any of these fancy gadgets, but for those of you who do, we're just going to cut it into parts. Typically, 1 cup of flour gives you 6 rotis. So what we will do now is we will make little balls out of them, like about this size. So they're flattened balls. They're not completely round, but they're flat. I hope you can see the side view. So these are flattened balls. We're going to make all of them into little balls. And we'll keep working it. You'll see that the edges of the balls are also, if they're rough, that means your gluten hasn't really started working yet. So what you can do is you can either continue to work it a little bit more, or you can just add one drop of oil to the ball of flour and then continue to work it in, and you'll have like a nice smooth ball like that. Okay, so let me just prep all the others as well. So I will show you a roti, and I'll show you a variation of that, which is a paratha, which is like a fried indulgence. So all of these are going back into the bowl. This is the one I'm going to work with first. So these two can go back in there as well. Now for the dry flour, that's the dry flour. And here's my rolling pin. So you take this, you flatten it just a little bit. So the idea is to get the edges also to be nice and thin so that it's not going to be uncooked on the edges. So you take this flattened dough patty and you dredge it in the flour. You bring it in, you flatten it even more. Don't worry if you cannot get it to be round the first time you make it. Nobody got it right the first time. So we all learned it, even though we saw our mothers and grandmothers making roti all our lives. When you actually sit down to make it yourself, it's never round. So it's totally fine. So you start rolling it and you give it a 90-degree flip, and then you roll it some more. Then you give it another 90-degree flip, you roll it some more. You give it a 90-degree flip and you roll it some more. So the motion of the rolling pin is not like pastry where you're just going in one direction. It's both. So you actually have to hold it very loosely between your hands. I don't know if you can see that it's actually pivoting. So my fingers are kind of holding it, but I'm not grabbing it. It's just a gentle hold so that it can roll back and forth and back and forth. And every time you flip it, you give it a 90-degree flip so that it's nice and even and you're working on all sides. So I don't know how much of the thickness is actually visible on this video, but I'll bring it up close. You see how thin this is? That's how thin you need to make it, just like maybe like a tortilla or a fajita that you're making with white flour. So you kind of go back and forth, dust it off a little bit. It's not sticky at all, and this is nice and hot. So I'm going to throw this right on top of the skillet. I make two at a time, so let me just go ahead and make the other one as well while this works. We just have to wait for this to get some bubbles. So it's going to start getting translucent and it's not going to look raw anymore. That's when we know it's time to flip. In the meantime, we can roll out the other one. So same process, you just pat it down a little bit, roll it 90 degrees, roll it 90 degrees, roll it 90 degrees, roll it. And if you feel like it's getting sticky, then you just dredge it really lightly in the flour and then bring it back to your board. You can even do this on a countertop. It doesn't have to be a rolling board like this one. This is marble, but I have granite countertops. I just chose to do this here so that the camera would have full view of everything. So voila, the second one is ready. So I'm going to throw that on the back of the skillet. If you can see here, this thing has started to get some bubbles. You see how it's getting like bubbles on top, like little blister thingies? So that's when you know it's time to flip this guy. So we flip this guy. The second side is going to cook a little bit longer than the first side because these brown spots that you have, we want to have a lot more of the brown spots on the other side. So basically the idea is to only flip it once. So you put it on once, then you flip it, and then it goes straight on the flame. So I'm going to crank up this flame. I'm going to do one on the flame and the other one I'm going to do on the skillet. So you'll see both techniques. Now, if you notice this one, this is getting a few blisters and little bubbles popping up. So you know that it's time to flip it. You can actually just check. You see how many brown spots it has? That's what we need. We need those many brown spots on this side. So the top of it is supposed to be nice and soft and melt in your mouth. And the bottom is supposed to be a little bit crisp. That's kind of like the idea, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to take it directly on my flame. And you'll see how it puffs up. I know, that's the magic. Yep. So you see it's going to puff up like a football. And you just let it be there. It does not burn. So do not panic. Do not worry. Keep an eye on it. And you see now it's nicely toasted on both sides. There you go. so I can actually remove it. And I can put it in a dish. I can slather it with butter or ghee or oil, whatever you eat. So this one I'm not going to do on the flame. I'm going to do it totally on the skillet. So the way to do this is you flip it back and you press it slightly so that the steam will start gathering between the two layers of the roti. So basically you're just trying to cook both sides. If you feel like the edges are a little raw or your edges were a little thick, you can press it down. And then you can just check. If you like, you want to cook it a little more, go right ahead. So if you're afraid to do this technique, you can just totally cook it on your skillet or on your griddle, whatever you have. And it's still a perfectly cooked roti. There you go. Really. So we have both our rotis here. I will do a comparison. This is the one from the flame, and this is the one from the skillet. So here you go. That's your roti making. You can wrap it in a tea towel and keep them warm before you serve. That's one way to do it. And that should be warm and moist. So just don't expose them to air. That's the trick. So now we're going to make what is called a paratha. And how you do it is it's the same dough that we had before, but now we're going to put some things inside. So we're going to put salt, we're going to put paprika, and we're going to fry this bad boy. Yep, I said fry. Okay, so let me get some spices. So the idea is I have some oil in a bowl. I'm just bringing everything over so you guys can see. And of all the spices, we're going to use just the paprika powder and the salt that's going to go in. So same technique, you're going to dredge the ball in the flour. So the paratha is a little bit thicker than traditional rotis are. And it doesn't have to be round. There are several ways of folding it to create layers. So it's really like a layered puff pastry type thing with oil and salt to enhance the taste. So you roll it as big as you can, and then you take some oil. If you eat butter, you can use butter, you can use ghee. If you're plant-based, you can use coconut oil, you can use peanut oil. So you put a little bit of oil in here, you take the salt, you sprinkle it to taste. This is sea salt, so it's a little mild. And then I have red chili powder. You can do paprika, you can do black pepper, whatever rocks your boat. You do that. And then we're going to start folding it. So how we fold it is we just roll it like this. And then we have what's called, it looks like a cigar. So you don't have to be perfect at this. Just get it done. Just roll it onto itself. And then take a little bit of oil and sort of hit it on one side, just a little bit. The idea is that when we start rolling it together, we want it to be flaky and we want it to be able to come apart. So you start rolling it onto itself like this, just like that. Just like that. And if you want to twist it, you can twist it. You know, all kinds of crazy things that we did with Play-Doh, you can do this with real dough and come up with tasty results. And then you just press it a little bit, but not too much. Going back to dredging it with the dry flour. And try to see if you can get some dry flour into the creases. So that way it's going to stay flaky and it's not going to lose the layers that you just painstakingly created. And let me tell you, the more butter, the more ghee you put in it, the tastier it's going to be. But I don't want to be that indulgent. I'm just showing you the technique. You can totally tweak it to your choice. So here we're going to start rolling it again. Now remember, on this, we don't have to put too much pressure because that's going to destroy the layers that we created. So we're just going to keep the pressure very gentle and even. I'll show you the thickness of it. This is how thick the sides of the paratha are. And you can see that there's still like these ringlets of layers that we created. Same skillet, It's going back on there. And my rolling pin just fell down. Let me get this thing out of the way. I'm going to use ghee, but you can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, you can use peanut oil, whatever you have, please use that. So I'm actually going to eat this for breakfast. So thank you for helping me make my breakfast. So same thing, it starts to blister up again. So paratha needs to cook a little bit longer because it has those thicker layers. So you want to just give it a little bit medium to high heat. You want to just give it a couple of extra seconds. You'll see the blisters are starting to form. Also, the blisters start to form much later than they would if it was a traditional roti because this is thicker. So just, you know, take the clues from whatever is coming and you'll see what to do next. You'll just know it after a while. So you see how it's like really puffing up? I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. Can you see how it's puffing up over here, right here? Yeah. So now is the time to flip it. So just remember that we flip it once and we don't put any oil. The second time we flip it, we have to put oil. So we should wait for the other layer down below to cook and get those lovely brown spots. So I think the way to remember it is a bubble flip, brown flip, and then you make it into a football or whatever, and then you put oil or whatever, however you want to fry it. So the first clue is to look for the bubbles, flip it. Second clue is to look for the brown spots, and then that's the final flip. So you only flip it twice. Okay, so you see how it's really browning and coming together. I like it a little bit more crisp because it has all these flaky layers. If you like them soft, you can totally put the oil and flip them at this point. So you're just going to press this down with a spatula or whatever you have. I'm going to go ahead and put some ghee, only because my Ayurvedic practitioner said to eat some. So it melts very beautifully. Just try to keep it only on top of the paratha. Don't let it roll over. And then you're going to take this and flip this over and you'll hear the sizzle. So there will be steam that'll come out. You'll hear the sizzle. And then you see how these flake, how it's rising up. So all these flakes are actually going to come apart. As it cooks, all the flakes are going to start coming apart and you'll see it. You see how it's nice and brown and crisp? So remember, this is already salty. It's kind of spicy. I know people who put garlic salt in it. I know people who put onion powder. So, you know, do whatever works for your palate. Literally, that's the key. And that's it. So we're done. A lot of people actually put oil on both sides, but I really don't like it that oily. So I just leave it at this. Now I'm going to crush it open and show you what the flakes actually look like. So I've turned off the stove. And so you're going to take it like this and you're going to basically just crush it open. And you see how flaky this is? And hot. Let me just bring the plate over. Yeah, so it's nice and flaky. You can see all the layers. It's nice and flaky. And it's yummy and it's piping hot. So all I need to do is make some chai and eat my paratha and put a dollop of grape jelly on it. And we're going to be good to go. So that's that for today's demo. We had some rotis that you can eat every day. You can do parathas. In the next one of the next videos, we'll probably do parathas with stuffing. So we'll put potatoes or cauliflower or whatever and try to make this more interesting. But this is my breakfast and it's calling out to me. So I gotta go, but thank you everyone for being with me, for watching this video. If you want to see any more videos, feel free to comment and tell me what you want to see. I know naan bread is definitely on the cards. I'm certainly going to do that for you guys. But thank you, lovely ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Keep cooking, keep currylicious, and, you know, keep tuned into Queen's Curry Kitchen. Thank you and have a great weekend.